Hi, Deborah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Learn at Home is TreePeople's virtual engagement education program that we started a year ago when COVID first hit. And, we have grown. Thanks to everybody who has followed along and, tune in with us during these live lessons. And yeah, today we are going to be talking about waste reduction. Kenny, could you go to the next slide, please? And our program Learn at Home, which has grown so much, as I said, thanks to our followers and all of you folks tuning in. We would not be able to continue this program without all of you, as well as seed funding generously provided by the Jean Aubuchon Senator Legacy Fund, as well as Subaru in Sherman Oaks. If you can go to the next slide, Kenny. So yeah, thank you so much for allowing this program to grow and blossom into what it has become today. And we're continuing to bring and share relevant information to help all of us learn at home and take action from our homes, as well as engage with each other and build a more sustainable and climate resilient future. All right, so today we have a very, very special guest. He is our very own TreePeople, Kenny Derieg, or otherwise known as Compost Kenny. And maybe many of you know him because he works out in the community doing education work. He not only trains teachers on how to, implement waste reduction solutions on campus, but also works directly with students on campus and now, virtually for the last year. So him and I are both youth coordinators. We work with students, and he is here today to share his knowledge on waste reduction and recycling issues and solutions. And this is, to kind of highlight sustainability during Earth Month, as well as, Earth Day. Every day is Earth Day, right? So we want to just share this information, and we want to hear from you as well. So if you have any questions or comments or anything you want to share, please make use of the chat. And throughout the presentation, place your questions in the chat, and Kenny will do his best to address the questions at the end during the Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the mic to Kenny.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Emmy, for that kind introduction, and happy Friday to you fine folks. I hope you're all doing well today. Thanks for joining. Thanks for participating in what will be a fun trash talking session. So we'll spend the next hour talking about how we'll manage our resources more properly and become more resilient by being more resourceful. Again, we'll learn a little bit about the issues that we're experiencing with our waste today, just very minimally, but more so talking about how we can make changes to our daily habits, to our daily lives, to our daily practices to be more sustainable and to have less of a footprint on this planet. So to kick things off, actually, I am submitting a link into the chat box that I would love for you to click on and submit to. It is a Menti link that if you click on it, it'll take you to another web page that will ask you a question. That question will be pulled up on my screen in just a second. So the question is, what item or items have you recently tried throwing away, but you weren't sure how to dispose of it? Maybe you were just confused which bin to throw it in or what it might do, putting it in that bin. A lot of us tend to do this wishful recycling, but maybe you were, struggling to find a bin to put it in. All right, so we're gonna see live action responses coming through on my screen here now. So batteries seems to be one. It's larger because more people are submitting that answer. So it seems that many of you have trouble finding out how to dispose of batteries. All right, we've got plastic bags, fax machine. Oh, we're moving and grooving here. Ice cream container, great. Every type of plastic, yes. Broken glass, yeah. iPhone, great. Oh, we're just getting it flooded in here. Batteries, still large. Plastic bags getting up there too. Light bulbs, yeah, that's a fun, tricky one as well. Let's see, it's just moving so much, it's hard to keep an eye on what's happening. Nail polish, great. Eggshells, toothbrush heads, lamp, used pizza box. Great. These are all wonderful. Well, we're going to talk about all these things today. So fasten your seatbelts. We have a lot to cover in the next 30, 40 minutes. But yeah, I'm loving seeing these responses coming through. Cables, pet waste, foil liners, yes, couch. Great. These are all wonderful things. So we'll hold on to this for now. We'll actually touch base on this later. But I'm glad that you all provided such wonderful items that will give us something to work on in the latter half of this presentation. So let's jump into it. As you know, part of TreePeople, we're out there planting trees. We're out there trying to be more in sync and synchronous with nature and with our planet. So one thing I always like to highlight, especially at the beginning of our waste talk and talking about resources, is that in nature, there is no waste. Everything gets repurposed. Everything gets recycled somehow. We have all these different cycles that our planet has figured out how to recycle different elements throughout the different phases, solid, liquid, and gas, all throughout our planet, throughout time. They just transition from one form to another and just become part of this great big cycle of life here on planet Earth. We have a water cycle, we have a nitrogen cycle, carbon cycle, there's an organic life cycle. Even rocks have cycle, believe it or not. Yeah, it's not very fast. You don't want to watch that cycle happen, but even rocks become sediment and soil, and it all morphs over a long time. So our planet is in this synchronous, kind of harmonious system, and really it's us humans that are creating these waste systems and waste products that are harming and disrupting that harmony that Mother Nature has created over millions and billions of years. So let's be more like the trees. Let's be more like nature and try to fit in more with the cycles of our planet instead of disrupting them and harming them. So I always like to also point out the fact that we can live in two different ways. We can live in a linear fashion or more of a circular fashion, or these are also considered systems or economies. So in a linear economy or a linear system, linear just means you have a beginning and an end. The alphabet starts with A, ends with Z. There you go. That's a linear, system right there. So in a linear system, we are extracting resources from our earth. We're drilling up oil and natural gas. We're creating plastics out of it. We're chopping down trees to make wood, to make paper. So we take these resources, we make products out of them. And in the linear system, we throw them away. They can just get thrown in the trash. They go to a landfill. They don't really provide us much of a benefit. They don't live out their full lifespan, their full use. In a circular economy, however, we can still have those trees be turned into wood, turned into paper. We could still have that plastic, but we want to reintroduce it into our economy, into these cycles and systems that we can utilize our natural resources to the full extent, so that tree that got chopped down to turn into paper doesn't die in vain, and it just goes to a landfill where it didn't get recycled. We'll talk a little bit more about paper recycling today, but yeah, we want to make sure that each resource that we take from our planet, we maximize to its fullest, right? And we don't want to just dispose of them mindlessly, yeah, and really just neglect the natural resources that are really so crucial to the health of our planet. So let's talk about landfills, because this is a linear system. This is something that we are dependent on. We all contribute towards landfills, and they are something that exists actually right in our very own backyards. So what we're looking at here is the Puente Hills landfill, which did close in 2013. So it has been capped off, it's reached capacity, but it's still, right in the middle of our community. It's still, you can see homes all around it. These are I believe this is the 60 freeway running alongside it, and the 605. So this is in Puente Hills. If you're not familiar, it's the Whittier area, Montebello-ish kind of area, about 15 and 20 minutes east of Los Angeles along the 60 freeway. And, we'll talk a little bit about the problem of landfills in just a second. But before we do, I actually have a quiz question for you. So, Emmy, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the poll questions, a poll should appear asking you the question like this. When it was open, Puente Hills landfill could accept up to blank pounds of waste per day. How many pounds of waste do you think that one landfill could accept? 24,000, 240,000, 2.4 million, 24 million, or 240 million pounds.
Ooh, we're getting so many results. It's moving all the
Awesome. Awesome, great. We'll keep it open for like 20 more seconds. All right, looks like 240,000 has the lead at the moment, followed by a 2.4 million. Maybe I shouldn't let the results out prematurely. All right, it looks like we've gotten many of the responses. So you got 3, 2, 1. Let's end the polling and let's see what happened. All right, it looks like our main answer, the primary answer was 240,000. Let's take a look. Let's see what that answer actually is. It's actually 24 million pounds of waste per day. Believe it or not, I don't even know how to conceptualize, envision 24 million pounds of anything, but nonetheless, that's what is going into a landfill on a daily basis. And this picture here on the right is just a vision. This is what you see when you're at the landfill. And if you've never been to one, I highly recommend checking it out. It's not a place that you would think that you want to go to, but it's very eye-opening, and it might change your perspective about your daily habits and how you might try to minimize that waste. So thank you for participating in our quick quiz question. And yeah, 24 million is not a lovely number. So Puente Hills was open for 56 years and it accepted over 284, what is that, billion pounds of waste, which is, again, just insane, absurd. It's now a 500-foot tall mountain, which was once a big hole in the ground where we just stuff all of our trash for 56 years. With a landfill, you can't really do too much with it. You can't really develop on it. The land is always shifting. We do our best to mitigate the environmental consequences of our landfills, but we'll talk about that in just a second as well. According to a 2018 study here in Los Angeles County, we disposed of about 67 million pounds of waste per day on a daily basis, or 6 days a week that the landfills are open for dumping. But 67 million pounds per day, which equates to, in a year's time, about almost 21 billion pounds of waste. Again, this is just LA County. There's just 10 million people we've got living here. And yeah, that's just a fraction of the amount of people in the country, on the continent, in the world. And so you can imagine just how much waste you can multiply this by to find out how much waste we're creating as a planet, if that's even calculatable. That's even a word. So I won't get too deep into this, but as you can see, over time, from the 1960s to 2013, the amount of waste that we have generated has risen, both as a country as a whole, and also on a per capita basis, on a per person level. So trash generation has been increasing for years, and we're just creating more and more waste. And most of this waste is going to a landfill. So this is what it looks like to cross, to dissect a landfill cross section. And you can see that we actually do have some engineering installations to try and minimize or mitigate the amount of harm that landfills have on our communities. So the main issue with landfills is that any organic waste or anything that once grew from the ground, whether it's the fruits and vegetables that we grow in our garden, or the food waste that we throw away in the trash, or even what about the clothes that we have made from cotton, made from hemp, made from natural fibers, or maybe even, paper. Paper comes from trees come from the ground. So all of this organic waste that goes to landfills, it turns into methane. It doesn't decompose as it would out in the forest, out in nature. Since it's deprived of oxygen in this mountain of trash, it doesn't decompose naturally the right way. It breaks down anaerobically, which creates methane gas. And this methane gas is a greenhouse gas that contributes to global warming. So we try to mitigate the methane from going into our atmosphere by installing these vacuum pipes that extract and suck out that methane gas. And actually, it's kind of cool because that methane is converted into electricity. Depending on how much methane can be generated, it can actually power up to thousands of homes in the surrounding area around a landfill, which is a very slight partial benefit of having a landfill, but it definitely doesn't surpass the negative thing, the negative consequences of the landfills. But we try, right? We try to extract that methane out, convert it to electricity, burn it that way. We also try to extract leachate, which is a toxic sludge. That's there's a lot of chemicals in landfills. There's lots of devices that could also emit toxic chemicals into landfills, and that water could potentially penetrate our underground water tables, right, our aquifers. And so we try to layer underneath the landfill as much as we can with like 10 or more feet of clay. We lay down these synthetic liners. Actually, here's another cross section of landfill. So here's our groundwater way down here at the bottom. There might be some soil and bedrock above it, but then here's the clay liner of the landfill, followed by a synthetic liner. And then here's the collection pipes that are built into landfills, as well as the methane extraction pipes. And here's all the trash and the toxic sludge that all this trash and this waste creates. So yeah, landfills are not the most beautiful mountains that there are in nature. They're actually quite harmful to communities, and we're actually running out of space, landfill space here in Los Angeles County. And if we don't figure this stuff out and get in order soon, we might very well be implementing this waste by rail system. LA County has already purchased land down in Imperial County, over 200 miles away, to landfill down there. Soon we might be putting our waste on trains, just filling up entire train cars with trash, sending that train 200 miles through Riverside County, right past Joshua Tree National Park, right past the Salton Sea, and into a community that had nothing to do with the waste that is now generated and being piled up in the bottom, the southeasternmost corner of California, just bordering Arizona to the right and Mexico to the south, to the south. So yeah, communities that had nothing to do with the waste that we're creating are now going to have to deal with some of the environmental consequences of these landfills. So sorry to bring you this bad news, but hopefully we can, figure things out in time to shift away from this system. And one of the ways that we are doing that, LA is very good at, being at the forefront of technology. So we are implementing these conversion technologies, which are processes capable of converting post-recycled residual solid waste, so our trash, into renewable negative carbon energy or fuels. This may be a thermal or a chemical or biological process. We won't get into all of that, mostly because I'm not scientific enough to describe them to you, but they are not incinerators. So we have more, more scientific processes that will break down our waste and allow us to convert it into a low sulfuric diesel that we can burn for fuel. So kind of neat that at least we're trying to recycle in certain ways and trying to minimize our landfill use. And so these conversion technologies have the benefit of reducing our dependence on landfills and exporting our waste. It locally produced renewable energy and fuels. It increases recycling and it reduces emissions. So this might be our future of waste. This might be what we lean into as we try to shift away from landfills. But it's not the cheapest of ways to handle our waste, and it's also very complex. So it takes a lot of big brains to do these things that I was not geared for. So all right, let's talk a little bit about recycling. So recycling rates have also gone up. Our waste generation has gone up, but so has recycling. But if you follow these orange squares, we're still only at about 34% in 2013. Which is still pretty similar, actually. Only about a third of recyclable materials are actually recycled. Most, 67% of the material that could be recycled is actually going to landfills or being polluted, being littered in our natural environment. And if we break it down by material, we see that lead acid batteries are actually recycled at the highest efficiency rate. We recycle them 99% of the time, mostly because of legal implications. And most people know that lead acid batteries aren't great for the environment, so we're pretty good about not dumping them, not just throwing them in the trash, but usually at a mechanic or wherever you get your batteries changed in your car, they usually handle it and dispose of it for you anyway. So that's why we have such high recycling rates for batteries. But as we work our way down, steel cans are great. They're very easily recyclable and easily collected. So those get recycled a lot. But as we work our way down, only 40% of tires get recycled. Only 34% of glass containers are recycled. And here we have PET bottles and jars. Less than a third of our plastic bottles and containers are being recycled. So a lot of that plastic is ending up in our, oceans and our waterways and our natural spaces, which is not what we want. But if we do happen to have a blue bin or get the recycling into a recycling bin, this is where it will end up, which is a material recovery facility. So here, the materials from the recycling bins are sorted by the different types and these high-tech machines, but also by human hands. So it's important to know that your waste will be, monitored or maybe even touched by human hands. And so we want to make sure that we're not putting dangerous, needles or any other sharp objects in the recycling. Even things like plastic bags that we want to recycle and that we hope are recyclable. Even putting things that aren't necessarily recyclable into these bins, it could gunk up and clog up the systems and makes it dangerous, because then the workers have to climb into the machines, and these are huge machines with drums and belts and all sorts of fancy stuff that becomes dangerous. So mindful to know that it's not just robots that are handling our waste. We're not living in Wall-E world yet, but the robots are part of the system. But once they're sorted into their different types, these materials like paper, glass, cardboard, metals, they get baled up like a bale of hay. And why on earth would we just stuff these things into a square brick? Well, because we get them ready to be loaded up into cargo containers, shipping containers. And we send our waste all over the world. Largely, we had relied on China for many decades, 30 or so years, until recently. And we also see that waste that comes from the United States litters, many other countries, mostly in Asian countries and also in several African countries as well. We find our waste. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we continue through the day. I told you there's a lot happening here today, so we're going to move fast. So again, for about 30 years, up until 2018, about a third to a half of our recyclable material, everything that we tried to recycle, we sent it over to China. And the agreement or the idea was that they take the material, create more products, and sell it right back to us and to other countries. Well, and it creates this recyclable system or economy. Well, in leading up to 2018, China realized that most of the stuff they were getting wasn't even recyclable. A lot of it was contaminated stuff. It was, we tried to recycle pizza boxes that are greasy or napkins that we've, blown our nose into. And they're like, we can't do anything with this, and we don't want your junk anymore. So they closed down, they stopped importing recyclable material from the United States, from many other countries as well, that just really relied on this system, on this partnership, or this exportation of our waste. But China decided they wanted to shut down their importing of the recyclable materials. Can't say I blame them at all, right? Who wants a bunch of trash just showing up all the time? But it really threw a wrench in our recycling systems here in the United States. It pretty much, threw on the brakes, and we had to take a look back in the mirror and say, well, hey, we actually don't even have the infrastructure to handle the amount of waste that we are creating here in the United States. We rely on other people and halfway around the world to handle our waste that we will never see, that had nothing to do with the waste generation. And it's just, we had to kind of take a look in the mirror and say, well, what are we going to do now? Unfortunately, sadly, what many, legislations or what many authorities decided to do is basically just send it to other countries. And here I'm going to play you a short little 2-minute clip of what it looks like in some of these countries that receive our waste. Or no.
Big recycling programs, and everything was about recycle. Recycle is the solution to everything, because we had China there. So China's just said, you know what? We're sick of being a dumping ground, and we don't want this stuff introduced into our country. I see the China thing as a reckoning, because it's all been this false market where we've just been shipping stuff to China. This is, in my 25-year career, this is the biggest recycling crisis globally that we have ever seen.
At the same time, the tons are going up and up and up. The price is going down and down and down and down to the point where now it's costing us $50 a ton to get rid of. If you think we're just going to take it from China and ship it to Thailand or Indonesia or Vietnam, where is it going to go?
When the government shut down the recycling center, most people shift to like more remote or hidden villages or other countries.
From US. This Nestle from UK. Yeah, it's from Australia. It's came from Toronto. Toronto. Dunkin' Donut. It's from Oregon. From New Zealand. Tivana. Ya awalnya kita memang merasa plastik ini sesuatu yang bagus ya. Jadi ini praktis begitu. Kemudian tapi kemudian terakhir kita bisa melihat bagaimana plastik itu berubah menjadi sebuah bencana bagi kita karena.
Dang, sorry to bring it down on a Friday like that, but it is important to know where our waste is ending up, where it's going, who it's impacting, what it's doing to our planet, to other people around the world that have nothing to do with the generation of this waste. There's even a sad article that Emmy shared with me earlier this year where people in Indonesia are burning plastic to cook their food, to cook tofu. And it's just this terrible, system that we've got where we just rely on throwing things away, where away is somewhere else, where we can just ignore it, where we can just forget about it. But at the end of the day, it's going somewhere. It's impacting someone. It's impacting somewhere. But there are ways that we can change our habits, our waste generation. So let's talk more about that. When we break it down by material, most of the waste that we generate is actually paper. We would think that it's plastic because plastic is such a huge mess right now, but it's actually paper. So 27% of the waste that we generate come from napkins, toilet paper, food wrapping, holiday wrapping, all sorts of different types of paper coming from our trees. So let's jump into that first, since we are tree people after all. Let's take a deeper look at paper. Well, paper comes from trees, right? So first, trees are felled. They are chopped down and sent to lumber mills, and there they are turned into wood products: lumber, plywood, wood chips. Well, we take the wood waste, the wood pulp from the lumber mills, and we send them to paper mills. And the paper mills there create lunch bags and notebooks and napkins and all sorts of fun paper materials. The average American uses about 700 pounds or about 7 trees worth of that paper and wood products each year. And that's a lot, more than I anticipated. And paper manufacturing uses more water per ton than any other product in the world to create. And it's the 3rd largest industrial consumer of energy. So not only are we chopping down trees to make paper, we are using a lot of water. We're burning a lot of fuel to power this process as well. So paper is not just a clean and green process, but and it also takes 390 gallons of oil to produce just 2,000 pounds of paper. Lots of burnt energy there. But if we recycle this paper and give that tree another life cycle, extend its life period, we can really minimize our pollution. We can actually reduce our water pollution by 35% by using recycled paper. Air pollution is decreased by 74%, and we can decrease our energy usage by 75% by simply recycling our paper. Throw it in the blue bin. Paper can be recycled 5 to 7 times before the fibers become too short to recycle. So each time you recycle paper, those wood pulp fibers become shorter and shorter. So when it reaches its 5th or 6th or 7th time being recycled, that's when it gets turned into newspapers or tissue paper or paper towels. lots of types of papers that won't be recycled again, right? Toilet paper, Kleenex, paper towels, these types of paper, once they're reaching the end of their recyclability. Newspapers can actually be recycled even though they are made from shorter fibers, and egg cartons are also made from those short paper fibers as well. I would love, to hear any ways that you reduce paper waste. So what are some tricks that you do at home? And everyone else here would love to learn from it as well. So please use the chat box to let us know ways that you reduce paper waste at home. Maybe it's something that none of us have heard of before, and it's this unique way to escape using the trees that we love so much that are all around us. But maybe you're looking for some ideas. Let's talk about some. If you have a habit of using paper towels, I'm guilty of it now and then. Every time I want to clean up something that's might stain a cloth or anything, but as much as I can, I try to use a cloth over paper towels, over napkins, just trying to clean up messes and wash the rag, and I can use it 1,000 more times. Reusable bags can reduce your need for the paper bags at the grocery store, and you can use that 1,000 times as well. I'm one of those old school kind of guys, I guess, that I like a paper bound book, but just the smell and the feel of holding a book and the satisfaction of putting a book down after finishing it. But also, we could reduce the need for paper by having a Kindle and, reducing the need to print paper. Or something that I try to do as often as I can is just carry a bandana with me in my back pocket whenever I'm out and about. And this helps me to wipe sweat off my forehead when I need it, blow my nose whenever I need it, wipe up a spill in the car whenever I need it. It comes in handy more than you would think, even to tie things up or to, serve purposes other than reducing our waste. So glad to see that y'all are typing some things into the chat. Let me take a look here while we're on the topic of paper. Let's see. I saw rags, not paper towels. Absolutely. Dishcloth instead of paper towels. A bidet, yeah, that reduces paper towel use, I think, by like 80% or something I heard. Work online, avoid writing stuff on paper. Yeah. I try to use scrap mail to use as my notepads. But I do like to write things on paper, like my grocery list for some reason. But I try to at least recycle and reuse what might otherwise be trash. Save paper for craft projects. Love it. Love it. These are great responses coming in. I'm so glad that y'all are already of the mindset. And, that's one thing about waste reduction is like, I can preach it all day long and I can tell you what to do, even though I don't like to do that. But, I can tell you ways to reduce waste, but ultimately it's going to come down to the daily decisions that you make. This is more of a lifestyle than it is, trying to be, as eco-friendly as possible. This is almost just a way of living. It's thrift shopping, and it's reusing, sour cream containers as Tupperware. And so these are, it's a mindset that also shapes a lifestyle. But glad to see that you are all of the mindset and already doing some really cool things to minimize the waste. Let's take a look at organics, which on this chart is broken down into food waste. We have yard trimmings and we have wood. And I would say all these things grow from the ground, right? So all of these things are organic. If you really want to go the extra mile, I would even wrap paper into organics, because again, they come from trees, and everything that grows from the ground that goes into a landfill is going to create that methane. So, you can compost paper or you can recycle paper, but I would even stretch this little section here to include the paper as well if we're trying to go the extra mile. But let's take a look at food waste, yard trimmings, and wood. So again, all this organic matter, whether it's food or grass clippings or dead leaves from trees, if it goes to the landfill, it breaks down into methane. And landfills are the third largest human-made cause of these methane emissions. So we are generating this. Third, right behind agriculture and transportation, the first two sources of methane emissions. But when we waste food, we're not only creating methane in a landfill, we're wasting a lot of other resources along the way, right? We're wasting water that it took to grow those crops. We're wasting the gasoline. We're wasting human energy and burnt, fuel energy. We're wasting labor, pesticides, land, fertilizers, all these resources washing right out into the ocean because we're not utilizing them as much as we could be, should be. And agriculture uses about 70% of all the fresh water that we use. And 25% of that water goes towards growing crops that will never be eaten. So again, just throwing our valuable resources right out the window for the sake of abundance. And so I would love to hear about your strategies for reducing organic waste. Please, again, use the chat box. It's wonderful. I'm so glad that you all are engaged and sharing these things, because that's what we came here for, right? I don't have all the answers. Y'all can teach me things too through this format. So let's find out ways that we can reduce organic waste on a daily basis. I love this old school leave it to beaver lawnmower right here. This throws the grass clippings right back on the lawn, and it's actually a self-fertilizer strategy. The grass can fertilize itself if you just allow the blades of grass to decompose naturally on the soil right then and there. You can recycle the nutrients on the spot. How easy is that? You don't even have to feed your lawn any sort of fertilizer at all. Just feed it itself. It cannibalizes itself. Down here, we have a pile of compost, whether it's in your own backyard, or maybe you can get a green organic waste bin from your municipality, from your city, or maybe if you want to join, there's a local community composting organization called LA Compost. I am a part-time worker of LA Compost, and you can see me out there in the garden from time to time, sifting piles of compost, shoveling piles of rotting food scraps, meeting folks that are coming to drop off food scraps. So if you're interested in joining a community compost program, check out lacompost.org. You might have a site near you that you can take your garden scraps to, or your food scraps for decomposition, for composting. We also have other organizations like food finders that come and pick up food from farmers markets, from businesses, from cafeterias, and they help to redirect and redistribute foods that otherwise wouldn't be eaten to folks that are hungry, right? That food goes to food shelters, to food banks, to churches, where that food can be then redistributed to hungry mouths. And that's a good way to reduce the waste, to reduce waste from being generated. This pen and paper here is for a strategy I try to do as much as I can, which is making a grocery list and going to the market strategically, and having a weekly meal plan set ahead of time, to where you could say, all right, I know I need these ingredients, and I'll try to stick as much to these ingredients as I can, and try not to go down the ice cream aisle on the way out, or whatever else might not be on your list. But going to the market with a strategy, it can also reduce the waste being generated at the end of the week, when we say, oh man, I didn't get to eat that broccoli that I just bought on a whim, and now I have to throw it away. So also, I like to try to make homemade cleaning solutions whenever I can, and using citrus peels is a great way to do that. You can use orange peels, lemon peels, grapefruit peels, rinds, and you throw them in some vinegar. You can add some other fun scents to it as well if you'd like, and let it sit for 4 to 6 weeks. Boom, you've got yourself an organic, clean, healthy cleaning solution that you can use to wipe down your counters, wipe down your walls, and all that good stuff. So all right, now let's talk about plastics. Almost 13% of the waste that we generate is plastics, but it seems like it's way more, right? It causes so many problems for us here on Earth. It just doesn't decompose, it doesn't break down. And that's because plastic is made from petroleum oil, which is a non-renewable resource. Again, talking about linear versus circular systems. We're drilling up oil. We know that it's not infinite. We know that it's going to run out eventually, but yet we make these plastics out of them that we still dispose of as if it is abundant and it will just be here infinitely. And making plastic also uses a lot of water and energy. And it also has harmful chemicals in the process that could potentially pollute our water and our air systems. Plastic can be recycled about 4 to 6 times. Again, it's kind of like paper. Every time you recycle it, it changes the integrity or the strength of that plastic. But not all plastics can be recycled. In general, this is just more so a generality than anything, but hard plastics typically are recyclable. So when we're talking about water bottles or food containers, rigid hard plastics tend to be more so recyclable, whereas the soft plastics are not usually, like saran wrap. Grocery bags, they can be recycled, but strategically. You can't put your grocery bags in the blue bin and send it off to the recycling facility that way. There used to be a lot of grocery bag recycling programs at grocery stores where they would say, bring your bags back to us and we'll send them off to go get recycled. But a lot of grocery stores have stopped that. So it's harder and harder to recycle plastic bags, but it is possible, but not in a blue bin. So anyway, that's just one of these tricky things about the waste that we create. plastics do not decompose, and that's the terrible thing that we are witnessing right now, where we have an entire ocean littered with microplastics, these plastics that we can't even see or can't even clean up because they're broken up into a million pieces. Plastic is working its way up our food chains, right? Fish are eating plastics, and we're eating those fish. So we're eating plastic. Birds are eating plastic all over the world. It's terrible. We're even finding, these forever chemicals, which a lot of time are derived from petroleum, from these old fossil fuels and these liquids that aren't really meant to be here on the Earth's surface at the moment. We're finding forever chemicals in the most distant regions, in Antarctica, in the North Pole. We're finding forever chemicals in polar bears that have never seen humans before. So our impacts are worldwide, and plastics tend to be the main source of those issues that we are experiencing. Again, 69% of plastic bottles don't get recycled, so most of them are in a landfill. Most of them are in the ocean, somewhere out where they aren't living their best life. And in the Los Angeles area alone, about 20,000 pounds of plastic waste fragments like straws or bags or soda bottles are carried into the Pacific Ocean every day. Not a good look, not what we want to be doing. But what are some ways that you reduce plastic waste? Again, please use the chat to let us know what you do at home. How do you avoid using plastic? So as you type in your strategies into the chat box, let's go over some that you can possibly do today. How about using a reusable straw, whether it's metal, maybe bamboo straw, something that you can use hundreds of times rather than just once. I am a smoothie drinker, so I do kind of like to use a straw, but I have a metal one that I clean out every time, and I've used it probably hundreds of times now. And I love my stainless steel water bottle. I've got it right by my side here as well, because it keeps my drinks cold or it keeps my drinks hot for long periods of time. That's another thing that I've used, thousands of times. If I were to, equate the amount of times I've filled up that water bottle to the amount of plastic water bottles that I would have created by drinking those, probably thousands. It has to be thousands. So one bottle can do has a lot of power. Again, your reusable bags, bringing a reusable bag so you don't have to get those thick now plastic bags that are at the grocery stores. A lot of people use plastic cutlery when it's just not the most ideal thing to do. You can just wash it off and use it a million more times if you got the real silverware, or even bamboo ware, some other sort of reusable ware. And also, my mother always tells me to bring the Pyrex back home whenever I bring leftovers home, and I try to steal as many bowls as I can. But these Pyrex bowls are another great way to transport food, and instead of throwing them in a Ziploc bag, instead of having food containers that are wasteful. So these lids tend to split on me, though. That's the problem I'm having with those, but I love them. All right, it's not on that chart, but electronic waste is something that we just can't avoid, right? We're increasing our use and our consumption of electronics, and that means that we also have electronic waste. So let's take a quick dive into that and see what it looks like. But before we do, another quick quiz question for y'all. How many cell phones were manufactured in the year 2018? Was it 450 million, 853 million, 1.5 billion, 2 billion, or 10 gazillion? I didn't know that was a number. But we're getting some votes for 10 gazillion, so that's fun. Glad y'all have a sense of humor out there. All right, we'll give you about 5-10 more seconds to get your guests in there. I don't even know how you even take a stab at this. Where do you even start? All right, we'll wrap it up in 3, 2, 1. All right. Oh, it looks like we have a tight race here between 2 billion and 1.5 billion. 2 billion was the top answer. Let's see. Oh, just off by a $500 million. 1.5 billion cell phones were created in 1 year. What? Are there even that many people? Yeah, unfortunately. But when electronics end up in landfills, they create toxins like lead, like mercury or cadmium. And again, these toxins can leak into the soil, leak into the water. No good, no bueno for anyone. More than 48 million tons of e-waste are produced every single year. 48 million tons. Someone wants to do the math on that. It's 48 million times 2,000. Math was not my strong suit, but if you want to type that number into the chat, feel free. And China, our largest population on Earth, who is also very technologically advanced, they dispose of 750 million electronic devices per year. Another mind-boggling number there. So cell phones, again, we produced 1.5 billion cell phones in 1 year. And these are all packed with toxic chemicals, right? They're not just made of grass and dandelions. They're made out of these chemicals and metals. In fact, gold and silver and palladium, platinum, these are all metals that go into our phones and our other types of technology. So we're also extracting a lot of resources to build these devices, right? The average American keeps a cell phone for about 2.5, almost 3 years, 34 months. And only about 1/5, about 20% of our electronic waste is actually recycled globally. While most of the remaining 80% ends up in landfills at home and in other countries where toxic metals leach into the environment. And sadly, this is what it looks like in other countries where they are recycling our electronic waste. This is in Ghana. And what's happening here is that they're burning the plastics around those valuable metals. Again, the silver and gold, the platinum, palladium, because those are what we can recycle. Those are recyclable. That's what's valuable in our electronics. Well, in order to get to those, they're just burning away all the burnable plastics around it. And you can see, obviously, this has drastic impacts, consequences on the people, on the environment, on the ecosystems. And it's just not a good sight. It's not good for them. It's not good for us. And we shouldn't be ignorant to these facts that this is happening. So it's not only in Africa, it's also in China. Look at this mountain of e-waste. Those are all keyboards and computers and modems and all sorts of electronic waste just piling up. Right in front of it looks like either a business or a home. And here in Jombang, Indonesia, again, just littered with electronic waste coming from all angles. Every country around the world is sending these electronics to these countries that are trying to do their best to recycle them, but in unhealthy conditions, in poor conditions, poor wages, all sorts of terrible things. But luckily, again, here in Los Angeles, we do have the luxury of being at the forefront of technology, of sustainability, of responsibility. And so luckily here in Los Angeles, you can use a variety of different options to recycle your e-waste, either through the city, LA Sanitation, through the county, Homeboy. Maybe you've heard of Homeboy Industries or you've been to the Homeboy Cafe. It's a wonderful organization. They also have electronics recycling. You can also take them to Staples. So we can handle our electronic waste properly if we do it strategically and thoughtfully. So lastly, but very not least, and I'll try to make this quick, but glass and metals, they are our friends, right? These are the most recyclable materials. They can be recycled indefinitely. Glass is made from basically sand, and we can take glass, we can take that sand and recycle it endlessly, right? Pardon me. Aluminum and tin are the most common metals used that are used and recycled. And you can take 20 recycled aluminum cans, you can make them with the same amount of energy that it takes to create one new aluminum can. So again, a lot of energy saved by recycling metals and a lot of energy spent by creating virgin cans from raw materials. So if you have something miscellaneous, again, we'll go back to all of those things that we asked about and we talked about at the beginning: batteries, electronics, cables, things that you don't know how the heck to throw them away. I'm one of those people too. I'm constantly like, what do I do with my wife's nail polish containers? I don't know. But fear nonetheless, no more. There is Earth 911. So this is a cool website that you can go to. There's also an app that you can download on your phone. The app on your phone is called iRecycle, but it's Earth 911 online for some reason, but they are the same thing. And here you can go to, you can either click how to recycle a certain product, or you can click where to recycle. So I'll click on this very quickly just so we can get an idea of how to do this. I mean, it's probably self-explanatory, but let's look up that nail polish. And let's see, I'm here in Los Angeles, 90025. And it will generate a list of places that can recycle your nail polish or whatever else you're trying to dispose of. So the closest thing to me is the UCLA Safe Collection Center. And I can see that they accept nail polish and they accept 92 other materials here. So if you click on that, you can see everything that they accept. It's everything from adult toys to cables to CD players, DVD players, gasoline, insecticides, latex paint. A lot of these things that you had on the question at the beginning, right? There's our nail polish, MP3 players. What are those? CD players. What are those? Paint thinners. You know, all these things that otherwise we don't want to throw into the trash. VCRs. What? What is that? I don't know. Just kidding. I still have plenty of VHS tapes at home. So anyway, Earth 911 is your go-to, or the iRecycle app on your phone. That is what you want to do when you're in a pickle, when you're in a bind and you don't know what to where to dispose of your materials. Also, I will include this link into the chat right now, which is TreePeople's Replace the Waste document. So, you know, easy things that you can do on a daily basis to replace your wasteful items. So feel free to click on that link in the chat for this PDF here, and maybe you can think of new ways to reduce your waste. So again, we want to try and exist in a circular fashion as much as we can, trying to reduce, reuse, recycle, repurpose whatever we can to make it into a fun craft, to do whatever else we can with those resources, instead of just sending things to the landfill and piling up waste for other generations to handle. So awesome. I think we have some time here to answer some questions. So let's test my knowledge and see if I'm really the waste expert that I claim to be.
Thank you so much, Kenny. That was just so much information, you know, just so important to know. I did send over I was copying the questions that I saw earlier in the chat and I sent them over to you. So you should
okay.
put that in the chat.
It's in the chat here? Okay. Let's see,
Yeah,
there's a lot here in the chat. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Sometimes it's hard to scroll in the chat. Let's see. Can you recycle egg cartons even though they've come in contact with eggs? Yes, absolutely. You can still recycle egg cartons. Again, it's one of those funny things. The egg cartons are made from those short paper fibers, but interestingly enough, they are recyclable. If you're, you know, hesitant for any reason, you can also compost your egg cartons, because again, they're paper-based, carbon-based, and they can be broken right back down into the soil. Good question. Can all paper be recycled, even shiny paper? Great question, Deborah. So all paper cannot be recycled, but most paper can. So even the shiny magazine paper, yeah, that can actually be recycled. You know, you don't want to recycle the envelopes that you get with the plastic sleeve on it, or you at least want to take it off of there before recycling it. Or, you know, of course, things like your paper towels or your toilet paper cannot be recycled. Anything that has been contaminated, basically, if it's ever become wet, if it's become, you know, moldy, yeah, probably. You know, if it's come into contact with anything funky, then it probably can't be recycled anymore, because those paper fibers get jeopardized. But if it's clean, you know, this goes for cardboard as well. You know, you can recycle a Amazon box, but you would want to compost a pizza box if it's greasy, because those fibers can't be recycled, but they can be broken down in the compost bin. So hopefully that answers your question, Deborah. Sorry, there's a lot of different types of paper now that I'm thinking about it, but let's see, we'll keep moving. Are we taking into account energy used to power the cloud? Is it better to store data on the cloud or use writing paper sparingly? That's a great question, Mario, that I wish I had the answer for, but you know, hopefully in an ideal world, as we shift towards, you know, green renewable energy, hopefully this question will be less, you know, it will be easier to answer. But at the moment, I can't exactly say, other than to say, you know, a lot of fossil fuels and energy and power and resources goes into electronics, but a lot of those resources are still used to make the paper. So it's probably hard to decipher at this moment in time. But again, hopefully as we shift to solar, other renewable forms of energy, that hopefully that question won't be hard to answer anymore. And it'll be easy to say, of course, it's better to be on your Kindle than it is to whatever. All right, how do we tell organizations to stop sending notepads? Great question. I would just say, do it. Just tell them, just write to them, leave them an email, call them up. just say, hey, we don't actually appreciate it the way that you might think that we do, or at least, or just send it back to them. Send it back to them and say, you can handle this now. What does LA City do with the organic yard waste they collect in the green bins? Thomas, wonderful question. Most of it gets composted either in a natural aerobic type of system, or there's also anaerobic systems where the organic waste is thrown in these huge vats with different types of anaerobic bacteria that help us to not only create solid waste or organic waste, but also creates electricity, right? Those bacteria that break it down, they actually generate electricity, or we somehow figured out, again, science not my strong suit, but or I'm no scientist rather, but yeah, we somehow convert that waste into fuel and into soil amendments as well, or we do it anaerobically in a good old fashioned compost system, break it down, and a lot of that compost actually gets sent to farms up in Kern County, or ranches where there are plenty of cattle, or where we're growing food for cattle. So we try to keep it somewhat local. It's in the central Southern California region. And also some of it does come back to us as well. The city has a free compost pickup days or pickup sites scattered throughout the county. So, you can do a Google search and find out where you might be able to get mulch, where you might be able to pick up compost, and they try to give back some of that goodness that they create. All right, should we do one more question?
That sounds good. Thank you so much, everyone, for your wonderful questions, by the way.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We won't have time to answer every single one because we do want to respect everybody's time, but I think we have time for one more question.
Okay, great. Mary asked, what do you do if you live in an apartment building? We have no composting and it is difficult to get the building owner to recycle. He says it's too expensive. Yeah, and we see this a lot, right, Mary? I mean, actually, owners and landlords are technically supposed to require recycling. It's by law, it is required. They're supposed to. So you can play that card if you'd like. You could say, hey, you're obligated by law. But otherwise, trying to just fit in wherever you can. Emmy is a wonderful example. She has hundreds of pet worms that she fosters, that she feeds her food scraps to, and they create this wonderful soil amendment. And yes, worm poop is actually some of the best stuff that you can give your garden or your plants. They disguise it and call it worm castings, but it's really worm poop. But it's wonderful, beautiful stuff. And you can also, you can reduce your food waste and you can fertilize your plants at the same time if you have some pet worms. Otherwise, LA Compost, again, is a community composting program, organization. You can find a local garden or something that's accessible to you that you can go take your food waste to. And, a little bit of how should I say, guerrilla dumping, I guess you could call it, is sometimes needed. If you have a neighbor that has a recycling bin, or if a business down the street has a recycling bin that's in the alley, maybe you can find sneaky ways to get your material into the proper bin. It might take some research, it might take some extra effort, but there are ways you can kind of weasel around it. So those are some things off the top of my head that you can do, that hopefully that gives you some sort of idea. But it is 2 o'clock, or at least 1:59, and we want to respect everybody's time. And we want to thank you very much for coming to today's session to talk some trash. And yeah, Emmy, do you have any closing statements?
No, just thank you, Kenny. Thank you, Kenny, for sharing your incredible knowledge and your amazingly positive energy and just spending this afternoon with us. And thank you to everybody who showed up. We had such a great turnout. So thank you for spending your Friday afternoon with us. And follow us on social media if you don't already, because we'll be coming back with more learn at home lessons in the coming months. So thank you so much and have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, y'all. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Ciao.